Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Chapter 1. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. Hello and welcome. Today we begin a journey that has transformed millions of lives worldwide. This is the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a book that reveals the secrets of financial success. Let's begin. Two dads. Two mindsets. I had two fathers. One was my real dad, my biological father. He was highly educated, had a PhD, and was a successful government employee. He believed in the traditional path of getting a good education, finding a secure job, and working hard to earn money. My second father was my best friend Mike's dad, whom I call my rich dad. He had very little formal education, but was one of the richest men in Hawaii. He believed in financial education, investing, and making money work for him. Both men were successful in their own ways, but they had completely different ways of thinking about money. My poor dad used to say, go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, and work hard. My rich dad used to say, the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. As a child, these two opposite views confused me. I wondered, who should I listen to? The beginning of my financial education. When I was 9 years old, I asked my dad, Dad, can you teach me how to make money? My poor dad replied, go to school, study hard, and you will make money by getting a good job. But that answer didn't satisfy me. I wanted to learn how to become rich. So I asked my best friend Mike if he wanted to learn too. He agreed, and we decided to find out how to make money. My poor dad didn't have an answer. So he said, go ask Mike's dad. Maybe he can teach you. That was the moment I met my rich dad, the man who would teach me the secrets of wealth. The lesson begins, the rich don't work for money. Mike and I went to Rich Dad's office. He smiled and said, so you two want to learn how to make money? We nodded eagerly. Rich Dad said, all right, but if you want to learn from me, you must agree to work for me. We were excited and agreed immediately. But then he added, I will not pay you. We were shocked. No money, I thought. Rich Dad smiled and said, that's your first lesson. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. At that time, we didn't understand what he meant. But we decided to trust him and started working for him. The difference in thinking. As we worked, we noticed something. Poor Dad always said, I can't afford it. Rich Dad taught us to ask, how can I afford it? This simple change in mindset made a big difference. When you say I can't afford it, your brain shuts down. But when you ask, how can I afford it? Your brain starts working on solutions. This was the first lesson in financial education. The rich don't just work for money. They train their minds to create opportunities and make money work for them. Conclusion. A new way of thinking. That day, my financial education began. I realized that schools don't teach us about money. They teach us how to work for money, but not how to make money work for us. Poor Dad wanted me to play it safe. Rich Dad wanted me to be financially intelligent. And that was just the beginning of my journey to financial freedom. End of chapter 1. Next chapter, the rich don't work for money. क्या आपको ये टोन और स्टाइल पसंद आ रहा है? मैं इसी तरह पूरी किताब लिख सकता हूँ, जिससे एंकर को बस सीधे पढ़ना रहे. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Chapter 2. The rich don't work for money. Fear and greed control most people's lives. The rich learn to control these emotions, instead of letting them control their decisions. The real lesson begins. After working for Rich Dad for a few weeks without pay, I started getting frustrated. I felt like I was being used. One Saturday morning, I decided to quit. I went to Rich Dad and said, this is unfair. You're not paying me anything. I work hard and I deserve to be paid. Rich Dad smiled and asked, do you think life is fair? I was silent. Then he continued, life doesn't teach you through words, it teaches you through actions. If you don't learn this lesson, you'll spend your whole life blaming others for your problems. I was confused. What lesson? I asked. The trap of fear and greed. Rich Dad explained. Most people let their emotions, fear and greed, control their lives. They wake up every day, go to work, get a paycheck, and then spend it all. If they don't get paid, they panic. If they get a raise, they spend more. This is the rat race, he said. They work hard to make money, but money controls them. I realized I was doing the same thing. I wanted money because I was afraid of not having enough. And when I got money, I wanted more. The rich don't let emotions control them. Instead, they use logic and financial intelligence to make decisions. How to make money work for you, I asked. So what should I do? Rich Dad said, instead of working for money, learn to make money work for you. Look for opportunities. Observe the world around you. He gave me an example. Go outside and look at the businesses. How do they make money? What problems do they solve? If you can answer these questions, you will see opportunities others don't. This changed my thinking. I realized that money wasn't the solution. Knowledge was. A practical lesson. Rich Dad gave me and Mike a new challenge. Find a way to make money without working for a paycheck. So, we observed. We noticed that Rich Dad's store had many used comic books lying around. We asked if we could take them. He agreed. We created a small library in Mike's house and charged kids a few cents to read as many comics as they wanted. Since most kids couldn't afford to buy comics, they were happy to pay a small fee to read them. Within a few weeks, we started making money without working. We had created a system that made money work for us. The power of financial education. Rich Dad was happy. He said, "You learned a valuable lesson. The rich don't work for money. They create assets that generate income for them. Your comic book library is an asset. It makes money even when you're not there." That day, I understood why the rich get richer. They focus on building assets, things that make money for them, while others focus on earning income from a job. Conclusion: the first step to wealth. That lesson changed my life. I realized the poor and middle class work for money. The rich learn how to make money work for them. It's not about how much money you earn, but how much you keep and how you make it grow. This was my first step towards financial freedom. End of Chapter 2. Next chapter. Why teach financial literacy? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Chapter 3. Why teach financial literacy? It's not how much money you make. It's how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. The turning point. One day I saw a well-dressed man driving a luxury car. I turned to my rich dad and said, "That man must be rich." Rich Dad smiled and said, "Maybe. Or maybe he's just heavily in debt." I was confused. "What do you mean?" He explained, "Many people look rich, but they are financially poor. They spend all their money on things that make them look successful, but they own nothing that actually makes them money. This is why financial literacy is important. Schools teach you how to work for money, but they don't teach you how to make money work for you. The difference between assets and liabilities." Rich Dad picked up a piece of paper and drew two simple columns. Assets, things that put money in your pocket. Liabilities, things that take money out of your pocket. Rich people buy assets. Poor people buy liabilities, thinking they are assets. I asked, "What's an example of an asset?" He replied, "Real estate that generates rental income. Stocks and businesses that grow in value and pay dividends. Intellectual property like books, patents, or music royalties." Then he asked, "And what do most people spend their money on?" I thought for a moment and answered, "Cars, houses, clothes, and gadgets." Rich Dad nodded, "Exactly. Those are liabilities if they don't put money in your pocket. Many people buy a big house and think it's an asset, but in reality, it takes money out of their pocket every month. The secret to wealth is simple. Buy assets, not liabilities. The illusion of being rich. Many people get a high-paying job and think they are rich, but they spend all their money on big houses with high mortgages, expensive cars with monthly payments, credit card bills. They may look rich, but they live paycheck to paycheck. If they lose their job, their entire lifestyle collapses. The middle class works hard for money, but never learns how to make money work for them. This is why financial literacy is so important. How the rich get richer. Rich Dad explained, "The rich don't work for money. They buy assets that generate income. Over time, these assets grow and their wealth increases without them having to work more hours. For example, a person who buys rental properties earns passive income every month. Someone who invests in dividend stocks gets paid without working. A business owner earns money even when they are not working. The goal is not to work hard for money, but to build a system that makes money for you." The rat race versus financial freedom. I realized that most people are stuck in the rat race. They work hard, they get paid. They spend their money on expenses and liabilities. They have to work even harder to keep up. Rich people do the opposite. They use their income to buy assets. These assets generate more income. Over time, their money works for them instead of them working for money. Conclusion. The first step to wealth. Rich Dad's lesson was clear. Learn financial literacy. Know the difference between assets and liabilities. Focus on building assets that generate passive income. Stop buying things that take money out of your pocket. If you want to be rich, don't work for money. Make money work for you. This was one of the most powerful lessons I ever learned. End of Chapter 3. Next chapter, Mind Your Own Business. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Chapter 4. Mind Your Own Business. The rich focus on building their asset column. The poor and middle class focus on building someone else's asset column. The employee trap. One day, I asked Rich Dad, "What do you mean by mind your own business?" He smiled and said, "Most people spend their lives working for someone else's business. They get a paycheck, pay their bills, and repeat the cycle. But they never build their own wealth. If you want to be rich, you must focus on growing your own business, not just your employer's business." I thought about my poor dad. He was a hard-working, educated man, but he always worked for someone else. He had a good salary, but he never built any assets. On the other hand, my rich dad owned businesses, real estate, and investments that made money for him, even when he wasn't working. Building your own asset column. Rich Dad explained, "Your job is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. If you want to be rich, don't just earn money. Invest in assets that generate income." He gave examples of assets: real estate, rental properties that pay you every month; stocks and bonds, investments that grow in value and pay dividends; businesses, owning a system that makes money for you; intellectual property, royalties from books, music, or patents. The middle class buys luxuries first. The rich buy assets first and luxuries later. The power of owning a business. Rich Dad then asked, "Why do you think McDonald's is so successful?" I replied, "Because they sell a lot of burgers." He laughed. "No, McDonald's is not in the burger business, it's in the real estate business. They own some of the most valuable land in the world." That was a powerful lesson. Even though McDonald's is known for selling fast food, their real wealth comes from owning prime real estate locations. The rich don't just work for money. They acquire businesses, land, and investments that generate wealth for them. Stop working for money. Start building wealth. I realize that most people work for a paycheck. Use that paycheck to pay bills, have nothing left at the end of the month. But the rich work to build assets. Use their assets to generate income, become financially free over time. Rich Dad said, "If you want to be rich, don't just work to earn, work to acquire assets." Your goal should be to increase your asset column, not just your paycheck. Conclusion: focus on your own business. The biggest lesson from this chapter: don't work only for a salary. Work to build your own wealth. Invest in assets that generate passive income. Think like an entrepreneur, not just an employee. Wealth is not about how much you earn. It's about how much you keep and how you make it grow. That was a lesson I would never forget. End of Chapter 4. Next chapter: the history of taxes and the power of corporations. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Chapter 5. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. The rich understand the power of corporations and taxes. The poor and middle class work for money, while the rich make money work for them. Why the rich pay less in taxes. One day I asked my rich dad, "Why do the rich get richer while the poor and middle class struggle?" He smiled and said, "One of the biggest reasons is taxes." I was confused. "But don't the rich pay more taxes?" Rich Dad laughed. "That's what they want you to believe. In reality, the rich know how to use the tax system to their advantage, while the poor and middle class keep paying higher and higher taxes." Then he explained how taxes work and why the rich keep getting richer. A brief history of taxes. In the past, there were no income taxes. Governments introduced taxes, claiming they were for the rich. But over time, the tax burden shifted to the middle class and poor. The rich, who understood corporations and tax laws, found ways to protect their wealth. Most people don't realize that taxes were originally created to take money from the rich. But the rich found legal ways to avoid them, and now the burden is on employees and small business owners. I was shocked. "So the poor and middle class pay more in taxes than the rich?" Rich Dad nodded. "Exactly. And the reason is simple. The poor and middle class earn money, pay taxes first, and then spend what's left. The rich earn money, spend first, and then pay taxes on what's left. The power of corporations. The biggest secret of the rich is not just knowing how to invest, it's knowing how to use corporations. Rich Dad explained that a corporation is a legal entity that protects wealth. When you own a business or corporation, you can deduct expenses before paying taxes, invest money before it gets taxed, protect personal wealth from liabilities. The rich don't work for money. They build businesses and use tax laws to their advantage. How the poor, middle class, and rich handle taxes. Poor and middle class earn, pay taxes, spend what's left. Rich earn, spend, pay taxes on what's left. That was a powerful lesson. The rich legally use corporations, real estate, and investments to reduce their taxes, while employees and small business owners pay the most. Why financial education matters. Rich Dad said, "The poor and middle class don't learn about taxes in school. That's why they struggle financially. But if you learn how money works, you can protect and grow your wealth." Conclusion: learn the rules of money. This lesson changed the way I saw money. I realized taxes favor the financially educated. Corporations are tools for protecting wealth. The rich don't work for money, they use money wisely. If you want to be rich, learn how money, taxes, and businesses work. That's the real secret of wealth. End of chapter 5. Next chapter, the rich invent money.